How much do people make in syndications? Listen, this is a great question. I'm going to tackle this question from the LP side of things, right? That's our passive investor. Typically, there are three main metrics investors look at. The first one's going to be cash on cash, which most people are familiar with, but that's just how much money did you invest and how much of a return did you make on that initial investment. So with cash on cash, that's going to be typically in the 6 to 9% annualized range if you're not including the exit. If you are including the exit, that's typically going to be more in that 15, 20, 25% range, somewhere up in that ballpark. It depends on a couple different factors. The second metric investors like to look at is IRR. Now, IRR is a little bit more complicated because it brings in the time value of money. And quite frankly, I don't know anyone who fully understands how to calculate that without using Excel or a calculator that has that functionality built in. And the reason is IRR is very similar to cash on cash return or average annual return, to be more accurate, except IRR factors in when you get that money back. So I'll give you two examples. Let's say you invest $100,000 in a deal and that deal delivers a 100% return over 5 years. All right, so you got a 100% return on a $100,000 investment over a 5-year period. Now, how you got that $100,000 in profit back could vary drastically. What if I gave you $20,000 each year for 5 years and then your initial investment back at the end? Well, that's going to be a 20% annualized return, which is great. For the average annual return, that's exactly what it is, right? It's a 20% average annualized return. But the return could be a little bit different. You can invest $100,000 and get nothing for 4 years. And then at the end of the 5th year, we sell the property, you get your initial $100,000 back, and you get the $100,000 of profit. Well, for most investors, they would say, well, hey, I would have rather gotten some of that money in years 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's not exactly the same because I could have reinvested some of that money during the first 4 years instead of waiting until the end. In that regard, the IRR actually factors in the fact that you didn't get any returns for those first 4 years, and it's going to be a lower return than that average annual return. Again, you still made the same $100,000 return over a 5-year period, but in one of those examples, you got the funds sooner. In the second example, you got them a little bit later in the process. So that's what IRR factors in. The third metric that we look at is called equity multiple. And I really like equity multiple because it's really the simplest of all the metrics. Equity multiple just measures just that. What did you multiply on the equity? For every dollar I gave you, what did you give me back? So you want to typically see an equity multiple on a longer projection, let's say a 5-year projection of around a 2.0, right? So in that same scenario, you invested $100,000, you got $100,000 back. Well, that equity multiple is 2, right? Because now you have $200,000. You invested $100,000, you got that initial $100,000 back, plus $100,000 in profit. So you got $200,000 back. So you invested 1, you got 2. That's a 2 equity multiple. That's the simplest way of doing it. Again, if we were to sell early, you're not going to get quite as much in that equity multiple. But again, in theory, you have other investments you can make. But those are the 3 metrics that folks pay attention to. So equity multiple is the last one. The second one, again, was IRR. And then that first one was cash on cash or average annual return.